Which platform has the better players, console or PC? This is an argument that's as old as video games themselves. And in this video, I'm going to explain the reasons why PC players are better than console players at Fortnite. And if you're a console player, my intentions are not to insult you, and I'm not trying to say that console players are any less skilled than PC players. Rather, I'm suggesting that console players are limiting their skill by using the weaker hardware built into a console. So please make sure you watch this whole video. I don't want this video to be about keyboard and mouse versus controller either, because controller players can compete with keyboard and mouse players as long as they're on a PC. So we're going to strictly speak about the hardware and the advantages you get when you play Fortnite on a PC. And before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications so when I release a new video, you get notified. Now, the first reason PC players are better than console players is that PC players can get higher FPS. FPS stands for frames per second, and a frame is basically an image, and FPS is a measurement of how many frames or images are displayed each second. Higher FPS means that animations look smoother, and lower FPS can make gameplay look choppy. In general, movies will have a frame rate of 24, because higher frame rates can look too smooth and unnatural to viewers. But when gaming, and in particular when playing fast-paced shooter games like Fortnite, you want the highest FPS possible so you get more information. As of right now, consoles are limited to 60 FPS in Fortnite, but a PC with a powerful graphics card can get over 300 FPS. And the fact that you can get higher FPS on a PC is the main reason why PC players are better than console players at Fortnite. Listen, it's a myth that the human eye can't see more than 60 FPS, and if you believe this, then you just haven't played with high FPS and a high refresh monitor, because the difference is as clear as day. But just because you can perceive a difference, does it really mean that high FPS makes you better at games? Yes, it does. And we have some good evidence of the effects of high FPS in gaming. For example, in one study by Nvidia, they showed that at 180 FPS, the KD ratio of a player is 90% better than someone playing at 60 frames per second in Fortnite. And in another study, looking at the relation between graphics card and monitor refresh rates, we can see that kill-death ratio increases by more than 100% when using an RTX 20 series graphics card and a 240Hz monitor in comparison to 60 FPS and a 60Hz monitor. So why exactly does high FPS make you better at Fortnite? It's because higher FPS increases the smoothness of animations, reduces the effect of ghosting, and reduces tearing. Higher FPS also reduces latency, and I'm not talking about network latency or ping. You see, a 60 FPS system takes longer to process things, and it's further behind the true state of the game, whereas a 240 FPS system is closer to the true state of the game. So, if you're playing using a 240 FPS system, you'll actually see an enemy sooner than someone using a 60 FPS system. In other words, it's as if playing with high FPS improves your reaction times. This effect is exemplified in a video from Linus Tech Tips. In the video, 5 players were put through a series of tests designed to test the impact of high FPS on gaming ability. In one test, called the double doors test, it was a practical assessment of your reaction time. Players were measured on the average number of times they could hit a target jumping through the double doors in CSGO. On your screen are the results from that particular double doors test, and you can see that some players were able to improve their performance by over 1000% when moving from the 60 FPS and Hz system to the 240 FPS and Hz system. So listen, when you have more FPS, you get more information. Information such as the speed and the trajectory of a target that can enable you to hit more of your shots. The fact is that playing Fortnite with high FPS and a high refresh monitor literally makes you a better player, and this is a huge advantage that PC players have over console players. Now, let's go on to the second reason why PC players are better than console players, and it's that PC players can tweak their Fortnite graphics settings. So when you play Fortnite using a console, you're restricted to the number of settings that you can change because the graphics settings on a console are preset and you can't change them. and you're not able to change the graphics settings because Epic Games wants Fortnite to look a certain way on consoles. On the other hand, PC players can tweak just about anything to do with their settings. For example, PC players can change their resolution and make it stretched. PC players can also change the graphics quality settings to make the game look a certain way. In general, PC players use lower settings in order to maximize FPS, and as you now know, higher FPS makes you better at Fortnite. You can also tweak the graphics settings to remove any visual clutter that may distract your focus from an enemy. For example, PC players can turn shadows off in Fortnite, but console players must play with shadows because they can't change their graphics settings. And the ability to turn shadows off is a huge advantage for PC players. Why? Because shadows are a major GPU resource and they limit your FPS, so turning shadows off can give you a significant FPS boost. Also, shadows negatively impact your ability to see enemies. In particular, if someone is using a dark skin and they're in a shadowy area, the shadows make it difficult for you to see them. But when you play on a PC and you turn shadows off, then you're able to see the enemies more clearly than you'd be able to on a console. This is why you can argue that darker skins have an advantage in Fortnite, at least when you're playing against someone that has shadows enabled, like a console player. Certain dark skins, like Elite Agent for example, have been banned in competitive tournaments when players were made to use high settings with shadows enabled. So even Epic Games know that dark skins can be difficult to see and grant an unfair advantage when shadows are turned on. And now the third reason why PC players are better than console players is that the best Fortnite players are on PC. Let me take you back to 2018, when Fortnite had a solo showdown tournament. In this particular tournament, the games weren't cross-platform. In other words, you would compete against players on your respective platform, so PC players were against PC players and console players were against console players. But the leaderboards were shared among PC and console players, so the leaderboards were quite surprising. Out of the top 50 solo showdown players, 46 were on console and just 4 were on PC. This led players to the conclusion that the quality of players was higher on consoles, because why else would so many of the top 50 players be on console? But they were looking at it backwards. You see, the reason that 92% of the top 50 players were on console is for the exact opposite reason. Because the level of competition on console was lower than on PC, some console players were able to do incredibly well, stomp through their games and earn a lot of points. And only 4 PC players reached the top 50 because PC Fortnite is far more competitive, so it was harder to get high scoring games. Fortunately, Epic Games realized that organizing tournaments in this way was a terrible idea, and they made future tournaments cross-platform. Now, virtually all of the players at the top of the leaderboards are on PC, and I don't think that we'll ever see a console player reach the top of the leaderboards in a cross-platform tournament because consoles just have too many factors limiting them. And the fact that the best players are on PC means that when you play on a PC, you're competing against better players. And when you play with or against better players, then you get better as a result. And as a PC player, it's easier to find Discord servers of very good players that you can play and practice with so you can continue to get better. And the fourth and final reason why PC players are better than console players is that playing with a keyboard and mouse on a PC is better than it is on a console. Now, I said at the beginning that I wouldn't make this a video about keyboard and mouse versus controllers, and I'm going to stick to that. Instead, I'm comparing keyboard and mouse on a PC against keyboard and mouse on a console. Because the thing is, a bunch of Fortnite players use a keyboard and mouse on their consoles because they want to experience what it's like to use a mouse and keyboard and they don't have a PC. In fact, my first experience using a keyboard and mouse in Fortnite was on my PS4, but just because you can play with a keyboard and mouse on your console doesn't mean you should. Trust me, it's not very good. And why isn't it very good? It's because the way your sensitivity is calculated isn't the same, so it can be difficult to fine-tune your settings. Also, the mouse movements aren't as smooth, and there's some input lag, so gameplay feels less responsive. And you're limited by your frames per second, and you can't change your graphics settings since you're on a console. So if you do want to play Fortnite using a keyboard and mouse, then you should just get a PC because it's a million times better. So to conclude, I don't think that console players are any less skilled than PC players. You could even argue that console players are more skilled because they play using weaker hardware. But it's precisely the weaker hardware that puts console players at a disadvantage and stops them from reaching their full potential. For example, if you took the world's best racing car driver and you put him in a bad car, then he would probably lose against lesser skilled drivers simply because he's limited by his vehicle. And it's the exact same thing for console players. They're limited by their vehicle. So if you're a console player, the best thing you can do to instantly improve your skill level is to upgrade to a good PC and get a high refresh monitor. And a PC doesn't have to be particularly expensive, especially if you build one yourself. And the great thing about building your own PC is that you can upgrade any of the parts when you want to further improve the performance. Unlike with a console, where you must wait years for the next generation to come around, and then your old console is obsolete. Also, with a PC you can personalize your gear to get the best mouse and mousepad for your requirements. On the other hand, the number of controllers that you can get are rather limited, and they're one size fits all. So if a controller is uncomfortable or not the right size for you, then there's not really a lot you can do about it. Finally, if you have any ambitions of becoming a Fortnite content creator and making YouTube videos or streaming, then it's going to be significantly more difficult to succeed on a console. So here's the bottom line, get a PC. Even if you're going to continue to play with a controller, it's still so much better. Anyway, that's the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, then leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications because it really helps me grow. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day. Peace.